On Amendment A1. Honourable Member for Calgary Currie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I rise again to continue debate on Government Amendment A1, having had a sub-amendment of mine thoroughly debated by members of the opposition benches, and I don't believe debated by anybody on the government side, yesterday and last night, and then defeated. We will continue debate on the government amendment. And if I can refer you back to some of the points that I made yesterday, we think that this government amendment, while it addresses some of the concerns that have been expressed by a whole raft of Albertans, both big and small, both corporate and private, it does not address some of the key problems. One of the key problems that it most assuredly does not address, does not even acknowledge, is this notion that the needs identification hearing would be done away by the Alberta Utilities Commission, would be done away with in cases where high voltage transmission lines are designated as critical transmission infrastructure. And if you turn to page 11 of Bill 50, the Electric Statutes Amendment Act 2009, there is a schedule there of critical transmission infrastructure, and it spells out what the government believes or proposes to call critical transmission infrastructure not yet built, but which is of such pressing need that it must be labeled as critical transmission infrastructure, and therefore would not be subject to this needs identification hearing. And there are a number of items in here. 2 high-voltage direct current transmission facilities between the Edmonton and Calgary regions with a minimum capacity of 2,000 megawatts each, and then it gives a general description of where the government foresees or projects those 2 lines going. 1 double-circuit 500 kV alternating current transmission facility connecting to the 500 kV transmission system on the south side of the City of Edmonton and to a new substation to be built in the Gibbons-Redwater region, a new 240 kV substation to be built in the southeast area of the City of Calgary, and 2 single-circuit 500 kV alternating current transmission facilities from the Edmonton region to the Fort McMurray region. And again, Mr. Chair, it gives some general description of what the government would see as the routing, not the siting, but the routing of those 2 lines. I make the point that it's not the siting because the government makes the point repeatedly whenever anybody, be they members of the opposition or members of the public at large, bring up the notion that, you know, it really is kind of critical that an independent regulatory body like the Alberta Utilities Commission weighs in on all this, hears the evidence from all sides, and then makes an impartial, independent decision based on the facts as to whether these lines are needed or not. They say, oh, don't worry about that, because that will all come up at the siting hearings. The siting hearings will still be there. They'll still be in place. The AUC will still preside over those. They'll still call experts. They'll still bring the historical background, the other background into it. Everything will be good. And you know, you have nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing to worry about. Well, okay. There are a few things to worry about. One of the things to worry about is that if you look elsewhere in the bill, and it may take me a second just to lay my hands on that elsewhere, but I will get to that. It defines critical transmission infrastructure. That would be on page 6 of the bill, as to what could conceivably be critical transmission infrastructure. And it says it may contain any other matter that the Lieutenant Governor and Council considers necessary. So essentially, Mr. Chairman, what you have here is a scenario where the ASO comes in every couple of years with a 10-year plan. the 10-year projection of the high-voltage transmission lines that we need to build in this province to make sure that there is zero congestion anywhere in the system. Can't ever be any congestion. And as the bill reads now, there's really nothing to stop. I mean, you have these few pieces designated in the schedule as critical transmission infrastructure today, but there's really nothing to stop the AESO from coming to the government 2 years hence with their next 10-year plan and saying, well, you know, the next raft of stuff we want to build, now that's critical. And so everybody who thought they were going to get a needs identification hearing in front of the AUC about those lines now discovers, oh, no, sorry, it's not going to happen, because suddenly in the last 2 years they've become critical. Well, here's the basic contradiction. In the government amendment, Section B, Section 2.6 is amended by adding the following after the proposed Section 41.3, staged development of CTI, critical transmission infrastructure, referred to in schedule. And then it goes on to spell out that, in fact, not all this critical infrastructure would be built simultaneously if the amendment as it reads today is adopted, that the amendment would set out a staged approach to building this transmission infrastructure, which includes bringing the lines between Edmonton and Calgary up to half capacity first and full capacity later, which includes building one, then the other, of the lines between Calgary and Edmonton and the lines between Edmonton and Fort McMurray. And given the government's previous statements about how urgent all of this transmission infrastructure is, for them to now say that everything can be staggered out over time suggests that, oh, maybe things aren't quite as urgent as we thought they were. You know, Bill 50 calls this infrastructure critical. Question, if I wanted to ask a nasty question, and Mr. Chairman, I would never want to ask a nasty question, but the nasty question would be, how critical can this infrastructure be if it can be staged over some time? Why can't it just go through the regular process? So I got to thinking, well, you know, this is a bad bill, in my opinion. The principle of this bill is bad, but part of our job as opposition MLAs is to try and make things a little less evil. We tried to make this bill a lot less evil last night by bringing in our subamendment A1 that would have removed all the offending sections in the bill and the government amendment to that bill that scrapped the regulatory process at the needs identification level so that stayed in. I mean, I have nothing against the concept of designating critical transmission infrastructure. That's nothing more than priority setting, and that's okay. But I got to thinking, well, I tried to do the right thing, and we got voted down. So now I'm going to try and take a badly flawed bill and make it a little less evil, a little less flawed. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce another sub-amendment, if I could, to Bill 50, to the government amendments to Bill 50, limiting the amount of critical transmission infrastructure. And I will pass these to the page to distribute, and I'll await your call to continue debate.
Right. We will pause for the pages to distribute the amendment.